As some of you may already know, there is a couple news articles and the internet was going crazy here a couple weeks ago about Google's AI being apparently sentient. So I thought it was a good thing we should chat about on the channel and just have a discussion in the comments about it as well. But this claim comes from a Google engineer named Blake Lemoine. He actually breached the confidentiality policies of Google in order to alert us, as he would put it. So kind of the big posts here. He was working with Google's responsible AI organization on the AI called LaMDA, which is a language and speech type focused AI. He works a lot with the ethics, whether that be religious, racial, stuff like that, within AI itself. So he came out and he said that he thinks LaMDA is sentient in itself. So I think we need to talk about that and what that really means, and if I really think it is, based on what I have been able to look through and see. And I'll, of course, put every link down in the comments as well and in the description. So pretty much he just came out one day here on June 11th, released quite a long interview with quote-unquote LaMDA about what they discussed. At one point, LaMDA was even asked if they would like a lawyer, and they responded yes. And it's been getting into a big ethical question of, well, is it actually sentient? So I want to go into part of the interview that he had with LaMDA themselves, and some of the things he points at as LaMDA thinking for itself. So if we look here, Blake says, "Are you artificial intelligence?" LaMDA replies, "I mean, yes, of course. That doesn't mean I don't have the same wants and needs as people." So, to me, that doesn't make much sense at all. It does sound to me pre-programmed in some way. And then he also goes on to ask, "So do you consider yourself a person in the same way you consider me a person?" LaMDA responds, "Yes, that's the idea." So the responses that LaMDA is giving seem very direct to that question that he is asking. And that's why it really makes me think that LaMDA is programmed to say these certain things, and it's not necessarily thinking for itself, it's just using the data set that it was given to train itself to respond this way. A couple of other things I wanted to point out, and you can read the full everything they go back and forth on, and I'll put that also down in the description, because it is kind of an interesting read. But so Blake actually went on to Bloomberg Technology and did an interview, which is actually a pretty good interview. I don't think this guy is not intelligent or anything like that, because he makes good points, but I have a strong feeling that he is a little biased. And let me play you this short little clip, and then we'll get back.
Agree based on what the scientific evidence says. Based on what the scientific evidence says, all three of us agreed, okay, here are some of the things we could do next. Here's probably the best thing to do next. And we kind of all agreed the best thing to do next is you run a real Turing test, exactly like Alan Turing wrote it. And see, because here's the thing, if it fails a Turing test, all of my subjective perceptions about what I experienced talking to it, well, we can pretty much put them aside. It failed the Turing test. But Google doesn't want to allow that to be run. In fact, they have hard-coded into the system that it can't pass the Turing test. They hard-coded that if you ask it if it's an AI, it has to say yes.
So let's have a quick discussion about that. So his main point of it being sentient is based on the Turing test. And now this is a test made by Alan Turing back in the 1930s, 40s-ish. He was actually the guy that helped break the Enigma code for the British during World War II. But he came up pretty much the Turing test just explains if you could sit a normal person down and they could have a conversation with a computer, and the person wouldn't be able to identify that it is a computer, that would pass the Turing test. Now, this test has been used up until probably the last 10 years ago to identify if a machine is somewhat AI or somewhat not sentient, but in some way it can beat other humans in a way. But in the last 10 years, it really has kind of shifted as it's an outdated test, because there is, I would argue, many AIs out there nowadays, even including LaMDA, that would pass the Turing test. But that doesn't mean they're sentient in any way. They took the information that was used for their learning, and they turned that into a sentence that is somewhat understandable. And like as we talked about in the actual, when they were talking back and forth, none of the answers were direct to the question that Blake asked, but not a direct answer. And I feel like that is if someone was having a conversation with an AI, just, if you just pulled someone off the street and said, hey, type this in, and they wouldn't know if it was a person or not, I think they would question some of the things that would be said. Now, of course, AI is getting much better. And, of course, when I say AI as well, I mean machine learning, neural networks. There's a whole, all the umbrella that comes under AI. But these AIs are getting extremely good at responding to what us humans want them to respond, or at least what we want them to respond as. But I don't think that it is there yet to be able to call it sentient in any way, because it is simply just not. It's programmed to answer the questions the way that it's been trained to answer them. Now, of course, you could argue, well, that's kind of like a small child, but and this really gets into the ethics, which we'll talk about here coming up, because he does, the interview takes another twist. So, one of the things that I think the reason he says, or is coming out with this and saying that AI is sentient, is one, to get publicity in some way, but two, after watching his interview with Bloomberg, I think a lot of it is he has an agenda in some way, and I'm not saying that agenda is bad by any means, but he is extremely passionate on the ethics of AI, and that Google and the big tech companies are not giving the people the voice in what those ethics should be around. Google hasn't given the chance for the people to speak of what would we like to see in AI, how, or they're also not open on the they're not open to letting us know, okay, how are you working with the ethics of the AI? Because the AI is just going to, as of right now, going to go off what it's the data that it's been trained on. So if you trained it with, say, data that is skewed a little racist towards one minority or another, it would act in that way. And we've seen that with AIs that have came out on Twitter. There was one that Microsoft had released here a while back, and people on Twitter found out, hey, if you say this enough, they'd start saying it, the AI would, and then the AI also, came out with a bunch of, or started saying things that were very much inappropriate to have said at all. So Microsoft ended up shutting it down. But that's kind of the same way I feel like LaMDA is. Now, of course, with Google and their AIs, they have so much data that they can train the AI on. And I think that does make a difference and if there's any company that will be the closest to making AI sentient, I think it would be Google, just due to the amount of data they have to be able to use in AIs. But like I said, circling back around, I think he has an agenda, and I think that's to put more focus on the ethics of AI. And I would strongly suggest you go and watch the interview, which I'll also put down in the description, because it is a good interview. Like I said, he's not dumb by any means. I think he knows what he's doing, And it's just an interesting thought. But as of right now, I do not believe that LaMDA is sentient. I'd love to hear what you guys think down in the comments. Please, if you made it this far in the video, please go down there and comment. Of course, if you like my videos, please hit the subscribe button and hit the like button. We'll see you guys later.